When Mu Chen's voice rang out in the training ground, the previously noisy atmosphere seemed to quiet down in an instant. Soon after, many pairs of eyes, filled with surprise, landed on him. No one had expected Mu Chen to take the initiative to challenge Luo Tong. Didn't he know that Luo Tong had been looking for an opportunity to pick a fight with him? Why was he now walking straight into it? Xun'er, what's going on with Mu Chen? Luo Tong isn't someone easy to mess with, Mo Ling said as he walked up to Tang Xun'er. His face was serious as he watched Mu Chen's back. Tang Xun'er shook her head. Although there was some concern in her eyes, she didn't show it on her face. She smiled lightly and said, "It's fine. He knows what he's doing." Mo Ling could only force a smile and nod. The sparring was within the rules, and even if he wanted to intervene, he couldn't. All he could do now was hope that Mu Chen really had some skills. Otherwise, Luo Tong would likely not miss such a good opportunity to humiliate him. Heh. Under the gazes of many, Luo Tong paused for a moment. His already dark expression grew even colder, and a sneer slowly crept onto his lips. Seems like after spending a few days in the heavenly class, you think you've mastered everything and can start acting arrogant? Luo Tong stood up and fixed his cold, gloomy eyes on Mu Chen. Is that it? Senior Luo Tong, you're mistaken. I just purely want to have a spar with you, Mu Chen said with a faint smile, his tone gentle. And isn't it only natural for a senior to spar with a newcomer? It was Zhongli who said that just a moment ago. Zhongli, who had been standing nearby, felt awkward as his name was brought up. But he quickly stared at Mu Chen with a fierce expression, thinking to himself, how dare this guy challenge Luo Tong directly? Didn't he know that Luo Tong was at the peak of the spirit movement stage? Luo Tong looked at Mu Chen's handsome face and the calm smile on it, his anger rising uncontrollably. That smile felt like mockery to him. He grinned coldly and said, since you've asked for it, as your senior, I naturally can't refuse. All right, fine. As he said the last two words, the cold light in Luo Tong's eyes became unmistakable. Spiritual energy began to swirl around his body, and a powerful aura erupted. The surrounding students quickly stepped back, afraid of getting caught in the crossfire. Mu Chen raised his hand. Please. Boom. Luo Tong wasted no time. His face darkened, and his spiritual energy exploded without reserve. He stepped forward, his figure shooting like an arrow, and threw a punch. It was accompanied by a deep, explosive sound as it slammed toward Mu Chen. The crowd around them jumped in shock. This wasn't sparring. Luo Tong clearly wanted to knock Mu Chen down. Mu Chen, however, showed no signs of avoiding the incoming attack. His dark spiritual energy enveloped his fist, and he met Luo Tong head-on with a hard, unyielding stance. He wanted to see just how strong the power of the peak spirit movement stage really was. Bang! A deep sound echoed as their fists collided heavily. The clash of their spiritual energies created a shockwave that rippled through the air, sending gusts of wind swirling around them. Thud! As the shockwave swept through, both figures staggered. Mu Chen was knocked back a few steps, while Luo Tong only retreated one step, clearly coming out on top in the direct clash. Luo Tong steadied himself, his pupils narrowing. He felt a slight sting in his fist. While Mu Chen's spiritual energy wasn't as powerful as his, if he hadn't poured all his strength into the strike, it was likely Mu Chen's dominant force would have broken through. It was clear that the quality of Mu Chen's spiritual energy was superior to his own. No matter how strong your spiritual energy is, there's a gap in our levels. I can crush you easily. Luo Tong's eyes turned cold. He was at the peak of the spirit movement stage, while Mu Chen was only at the mid-stage. Though the difference seemed small, it was enough to overwhelm him. Didn't your father ever tell you that it's better to endure in silence until you have the strength to fight back? Coming at me like this is just asking to be humiliated. Mu Chen heard this and smiled lightly. When I was learning to be patient, you were still a good little student in the academy. And the reason for patience is to avoid fighting someone you can't defeat. Unfortunately, in my eyes, you don't even belong to that category. Luo Tong's eyes flashed with a sinister glint. He extended two fingers, forming a sword gesture, as dark green spiritual energy surged violently, condensing at his fingertips into a faintly glowing sword tip. A sharp aura radiated from it. The great Luo sword art? Some of the surrounding students were startled, exclaiming in surprise at the sight of the blue glowing sword tip at Luo Tong's fingers. Is that the great Luo sword art from the Luo domain? Mu Chen's gaze swept over the glowing sword tip. Low-grade spiritual class, great Luo sword art. This was the signature technique of the Lord of the Luo domain. He hadn't expected Luo Tong to have cultivated it as well. However, from the looks of it, his mastery was still lacking. Even so, at the spirit movement stage, this was already an impressive feat. Whoosh! Luo Tong gave Mu Chen no time to think. His gaze was icy as he shot forward, fingers like a long sword, slicing through the air with terrifying speed, thrusting directly toward Mu Chen. Where the sword tip passed, even the air seemed to be torn apart. Mu Chen's pupils locked onto the incoming strike. The sheer sharpness of it made his pores tighten involuntarily. His right hand slowly clenched. Dark spiritual energy surged through his body, flooding into his right palm. A faint black seal began to emerge there, exuding a chilling aura. A burst of eerie black light suddenly erupted from Mu Chen's palm. At this moment, his hand seemed to be clutching a black sun, its ominous energy sending chills down spines. Boom! Mu Chen stomped the ground, his figure pouncing forward like a panther. Despite Luo Tong's fierce assault, he didn't choose to evade. This scene left many onlookers in shock. Courting death. Luo Tong's voice was laced with malice. His blue glowing sword tip did not slow in the slightest, piercing toward Mu Chen's throat with lightning speed. Clang! A fist shrouded in intense black light suddenly struck out. The black radiance, like a dark sun, collided head-on with the blue glowing sword tip. Boom! A violent wave of spiritual energy erupted, causing the ground to tremble. Countless students held their breath, their eyes locked onto the point of collision between the blue glowing sword tip and the black light. Break! A cold glint flashed in Mu Chen's eyes. Inside his chi si, his spiritual energy surged forth without restraint. In his palm, the black seal trembled violently before suddenly appearing in front of his fist, slamming heavily into the sword tip. Crack! A faint shattering sound rang out. The blue glowing sword tip abruptly stalled, and in the next instant, cracks rapidly spread across it. Boom! The sword tip completely shattered. Luo Tong's eyes filled with shock as he staggered backward in a disheveled retreat. Mu Chen did not pursue. He simply flipped his palm, causing the black seal to dissipate. The lingering energy in the air gradually faded, but the surroundings remained deathly silent. Numerous stunned gazes were fixed on Mu Chen's tall, slender figure, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. He hadn't just blocked Luo Tong's strongest attack, he had overpowered him. Impossible! Zhang Li and Teng Yong were dumbstruck. Luo Tong, a late spirit movement stage cultivator, had actually lost to Mu Chen, who was only at mid-spirit movement stage. This? Imo Ling's expression grew solemn, waves of emotion stirring within him. Phew! Tang Xun'er quietly let out a breath of relief, her delicate hands finally unclenching. This guy really was something else. Senior Luo Tong, thank you for the match. Mu Chen cupped his hands with a smile, though his gaze flickered toward his palm. The black seal had faded considerably. The sinister death seal, in terms of raw power, was certainly beyond the level of a mortal-grade upper-tier technique. Perhaps due to its extreme demand for spiritual energy, it had been categorized at that level. However, the energy consumption of the sinister death seal was immense. That previous exchange had drained nearly half of his Chi Si's spiritual energy. Though part of it was due to his inexperience with the technique, the expenditure was still beyond even most low-grade spiritual class arts. Luo Tong's face was ashen. He clearly hadn't expected this outcome, but for the moment, he had no words. The sheer ferocity of Mu Chen's attack had sent tremors through him. This guy actually knows such a powerful spirit art. Could it have been prepared by his father for him? Luo Tong gritted his teeth, thinking to himself. He had practiced the great Luo sword art for a long time to achieve such results, but he never expected it would still be insufficient against Mu Chen. This guy, how many more tricks does he have? Mu Chen, however, paid no attention to Luo Tong's futile thoughts. The intimidation effect he aimed for had already been achieved. It seemed that from now on, Luo Tong might hold back a bit more. With that, he clapped his hands and was about to turn away. "Mu-chun, come here." Just as he was turning around, a faint voice suddenly came from not far away. He was momentarily startled, turned his head, and saw Teacher Mo standing nearby, though he hadn't noticed when he arrived. Mu-chun froze for a moment, his gaze meeting Tang Qian'er's for a brief moment. After a slight hesitation, he followed Teacher Mo under the watchful eyes of the other students. Teacher Mo stopped when they reached the quiet woods. He turned around, narrowing his eyes, his voice growing stern. "You've been practicing the Sinister Death Seal?" "You've been practicing the Sinister Death Seal?" Mu-chun looked at Teacher Mo, who had a somewhat severe expression, and couldn't help but chuckle awkwardly before nodding. Given Teacher Mo's strength at the Divine Soul stage, it was clear that his secret couldn't be hidden. "You should not have the authority to practice it yet, right?" Teacher Mo said in a deep voice. Mu-chun blinked but didn't answer. He had already practiced it, so could he just undo it? Seeing Mu-chun's expression, Teacher Mo's severity faltered. This kid didn't seem to care about his authority. He shook his head helplessly and said, "Can't you stop acting recklessly? I just wanted to give it a try. If there's a problem, I'll stop. I value my own life more than anyone." Mu-chun smiled. Teacher Mo shot him a look, somewhat exasperated. After a brief hesitation, he asked, "Did you succeed?" "Sort of," Mu-chun said, extending his hand. In the palm of his hand, a faint black seal appeared, barely visible. Teacher Mo looked at the black seal in Mu-chun's palm, his lips twitching slightly. Although he had sensed it earlier, seeing Mu-chun actually manage to cultivate the Sinister Death Seal in such a short time still left him somewhat shaken. Such talent. It was no wonder he had earned his qualification for the Spirit Road. "You're quite interested in this Sinister Death Seal, aren't you?" Teacher Mo glanced at Mu-chun. Since the last time he had brought him to the Spirit Art Chamber's Heaven Layer, he had noticed Mu-chun's interest in this art. "It seems this spirit art isn't simple," Mu-chun thought for a moment before responding. Although it appeared to be a mortal-grade upper-tier art, he had a vague feeling that something wasn't right. "Oh." Teacher Mo raised an eyebrow, looking at him. "It just feels like the Sinister Death Seal has great potential. The cultivation on the surface seems like just the beginning. I think there might be a way to make it stronger," Mu-chun murmured. Teacher Mo's eyes narrowed slightly, and a flicker of surprise passed through his gaze. Mu-chun stared at Teacher Mo and suddenly smiled, a hint of slyness in his expression. "Teacher Mo must know a thing or two about this Sinister Death Seal, right? You seem quite interested in it as well." Teacher Mo glanced at Mu-chun, who resembled a little fox, and helplessly nodded. "I've practiced the Sinister Death Seal myself." As he spoke, he extended his hand. To Mu-chun's astonishment, a black seal appeared in his palm as well. However, Teacher Mo's seal was much deeper and more complete than the one Mu-chun had cultivated. The cold, sinister energy emanating from it far surpassed the one Mu-chun had created. Mu-chun stared at the black seal in Teacher Mo's palm, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Looks like I was right. This spirit art isn't simple. Otherwise, with Teacher Mo's insight, there's no way you'd have taken an interest in it." Teacher Mo was a genuine powerhouse at the Divine Soul stage, a figure of prominence in the Northern Spirit realm. If the Sinister Death Seal were just an ordinary mortal-grade spirit art, he would never have bothered to cultivate it. "You brat." Teacher Mo gave a bitter smile. This kid was truly slippery. After a moment of contemplation, he slowly said, "Do you want to know how the Sinister Death Seal can truly show its power?" Mu-chun's eyes lit up, and he nodded vigorously. "It's simple," Teacher Mo said with a slight smile, extending his left hand. To Mu-chun's astonishment, a black seal appeared in his left palm as well. The Sinister Death Seal could cultivate multiple death seals. Mu-chun's eyes flashed with excitement, and a fervent look spread across his face. He stared at Teacher Mo, murmuring, "The reason the Sinister Death Seal doesn't have further cultivation methods is not because there aren't any. It's because the power of this art lies in being able to cultivate multiple death seals. The seals stack, and only then can it unleash its true strength." Teacher Emo nodded, saying, "But the sinister death seal demands an enormous amount of spiritual energy. I put in all my strength just to barely cultivate 2 death seals. And with each additional seal, the backlash grows stronger. I once tried to cultivate a 3rd seal but almost ended up seriously injured by the recoil." Chen deeply agreed. When he first cultivated the 1st death seal, he had to exert all his strength to withstand the impact when the seal formed. If he were to attempt the 2nd one, he truly didn't know if he could endure it. Now that you've successfully cultivated the 1st death seal, don't rush to condense the 2nd one. Be careful of any unforeseen consequences, Teacher Emo reminded him. Chen nodded. Although he was eager to experience the true power of the sinister death seal, he also understood that aiming too high without preparation wouldn't benefit him. Seeing Chen's response, Teacher Emo didn't say more. He waved his hand, and Chen took his leave. As he turned the corner, he saw Xun'er waiting for him eagerly. "Are you all right? Did Teacher Emo do anything to you?" Xun'er immediately asked, concerned, as Chen had broken some rules in his cultivation of the sinister death seal. She was worried he might face punishment. Chen smiled and shook his head. Then, he looked at the black seal on his palm, feeling a slight warmth in his heart. The sinister death seal was indeed no simple matter. It seemed he would need to spend more effort on it in the future. In the quiet night, Chen sat cross-legged. His hands once again shifted as he formed seal gestures. A strand of dark spiritual energy flowed and gathered at his fingertips. Crack. However, when these dark spiritual energies entwined and tried to form a seal, they suddenly went out of control, fluctuating before dissipating. Chen looked at his empty palm and helplessly shook his head. He had only attempted to condense the 2nd death seal, but the result was clear. He had failed. The difficulty of forming the 2nd death seal was far greater than the 1st one. "It seems I'll have to take it slow," Chen muttered to himself. He then withdrew his focus, slightly closed his eyes, and began to cultivate the great pagoda art, drawing in the surrounding spiritual energy and transforming it into dark spiritual power, slowly channeling it into his chi. Meanwhile, Chen also separated some of his spiritual energy, letting it flow through his arm's meridians, nourishing the black death seal on his palm, making its color deepen further. After yesterday's sparring session with Luo Tong at the training ground, Chen's reputation had spread throughout the Eastern Academy's heavenly class. The senior students who had once relied on their seniority no longer dared to look down on this newcomer who had just advanced. Tan Qingshan's fierce display the previous day had also made people realize that this seemingly quiet young man was not someone to provoke. As a result, no one came looking for trouble with him in the following days, and Chen found peace for the first time. In this newfound tranquility, Chen devoted all his attention to cultivation. During the day, he trained at the practice ground with the help of the level 3 spirit gathering array, and the spiritual energy within his chi grew stronger day by day. At night, while nourishing the black death seal on his palm, he also attempted to condense the 2nd death seal, but without exception, he failed each time. However, despite repeated failures, Chen didn't give up. He could vaguely feel that with each failure, he was becoming more skilled at controlling the sinister death seal. His control over the seal was becoming more precise and efficient. The sense of being closer to success made Chen feel a little joy in his heart. Time passed quietly, and in the blink of an eye, nearly half a month had passed. In these 2 weeks, the spiritual energy in Chen's chi had become increasingly abundant. Although he hadn't reached the late stage of spirit movement, he had clearly become much stronger compared to 2 weeks ago. As his spiritual energy grew, his control over the sinister death seal also became more refined. He had gained an impressive level of control over the 1st death seal, no longer causing unnecessary depletion of energy as he had during his battle with Luo Tong. As for the 2nd death seal, Chen had a vague sense of how to condense it, but due to insufficient spiritual energy, he still couldn't successfully form it, which left him a little disappointed. In the practice ground, when Chen heard the bell signaling the end of his lesson, he opened his eyes. Sensing the surging spiritual energy in his chi, he smiled faintly and stretched. "Hey!" A sweet voice called out from the side. Mu Chun turned his head to see Xun'er smiling at him, her eyes full of expectation. "What's up?" Mu Chun asked with a smile. "Tomorrow, we're heading to the Northern Spirit Wilderness for training." Xun'er replied with a smile. Mu Chun was momentarily stunned, then he smiled and nodded. He had been so immersed in his cultivation recently that he almost lost track of time. However, it was probably for the best. Right now, he was struggling with the second Sinister death seal, unable to refine it due to a lack of spiritual energy. It was said that there were medicinal herbs within the Northern Spirit Wilderness, and if he could find them, they would be just what he needed to resolve his immediate dilemma. This time, when we enter the Northern Spirit Wilderness for cultivation, you need to push yourself even harder. I heard Lu Mubai from the Western Academy will also participate, and he'll be teaming up with Hong Ling from the same academy. "We can't lose to them," said Xun'er seriously. "Lu Mubai, huh?" Mu Chun smiled faintly. That was the real deal, the top student. And now, they were about to have their first clash in the Northern Spirit Wilderness? Interesting. A glint flashed in Mu Chun's black eyes. He had never feared anyone in the Spirit Road, and that would remain true in the Northern Spirit Realm as well. The Northern Spirit Wilderness was located in the northwest of the Northern Spirit Realm, about a day's journey away. This vast region was one of the most bustling places in the Northern Spirit Realm. Although the wilderness was filled with countless dangers, opportunity often followed close behind, and many people entered the Northern Spirit Wilderness in search of fortune. Some found their destiny, while others were buried under the decaying branches and leaves. Heading to the Northern Spirit Wilderness for cultivation was a significant event. Nearly half of the heavenly class students would participate, as they all knew that, while quietly cultivating in the academy, what they needed most was true combat experience. Only through actual battle could one's temperament be hardened and their resolve strengthened. It was an essential part of the path to becoming a true powerhouse. The Northern Spirit Wilderness was not only home to many spirit beasts, but also attracted all kinds of people, including some with notorious reputations. Compared to these ruthless characters, the students seemed like lambs, even if their individual strengths were not weak. In a real fight, they were unlikely to be a match for these vicious figures. To protect the students, the Academy sent out a powerful guard force. Master Mo from the Eastern Academy and Master Shi from the Western Academy would also accompany them. These two were true Divine Soul stage experts, so it was unlikely that anyone would dare cause trouble in front of such formidable figures. In the early morning, the cultivation team set off. It was not until near dusk that they finally arrived at the outer edges of the Northern Spirit Wilderness. As nightfall approached, they set up camp. Night enveloped the camp, and the bonfire flickered in the camp. The students, clearly few in number at such a place, seemed excited. The entire camp was filled with a lively atmosphere, and that energy drew some curious eyes from the darkness. Most of them were adventurers who recognized the group as naive newcomers. They scoffed and gradually moved away. In their eyes, these students from the academy would probably be trembling in fear when facing the ferocious spirit beasts. Mu Chun sat cross-legged by the bonfire, gazing into the darkness beyond the camp. In the distant depths, the eerie, blood-curdling roars of beasts echoed. This scene felt somewhat familiar. However, the atmosphere here was far less brutal and bloody than the spirit road he remembered. As Mu Chun was lost in thought, a delicate, slender jade hand suddenly reached out from behind him and patted him on the shoulder. The moment the hand touched his shoulder, his black eyes flashed coldly, and his body tensed like a predator about to pounce. His hand shot out like lightning, grabbing the jade hand firmly. Ouch! A sharp cry rang out, and Mu Chun snapped back to his senses. Turning around, he saw Xun'er behind him. The coldness in his eyes quickly faded, and he awkwardly shook his head before quickly releasing her hand. "What are you doing? That hurt." Xun'er huffed angrily and sat down beside him, rubbing her fair wrist and complaining. "Sorry." Mu Chun forced a smile. The training he underwent during his time on the Spirit Road had made him develop a near-instinctive sense of alertness. That instinct had been suppressed ever since he returned to the Northern Spirit Realm, but being in such a familiar environment had awakened it again. "What's wrong with you?" Xun'er pouted, her beautiful eyes fixed on Mu Chen. The young girl, being sharp, noticed the cold feeling in her heart when Mu Chen had held her delicate wrist earlier. She felt that if it weren't for her cry of pain, Mu Chen might have directly crushed her wrist. Mu Chen stared at the campfire in front of him, remaining silent for a moment before speaking. In the spirit road, if someone did to me what you just did, I might have killed them, because if I don't act, it could be me who ends up dead. Xun'er was taken aback. She looked at the calm-faced young man, and when he mentioned killing, his expression showed no significant change. It was as if he had become accustomed to such a thing. That spirit road sounds a bit scary, Xun'er mumbled. To them, the spirit road seemed mysterious. It was said that those who returned from it never spoke of what happened there. However, most of them were incredibly powerful, which made young people like Xun'er yearn for it. But the naive ones like them didn't know that to gain such monstrous strength, one had to come from a place that was equally monstrous. Mu Chen gave a soft smile, murmuring to himself, "There, everyone is a competitor, and it's a brutal kind. People there are all freaks. Maybe just a moment ago, they'd smile at you, and the next moment, a dagger is stuck in your chest. So, in there, trust is a rare thing. But if you can find it, it becomes something you'll treasure for a lifetime." Mu Chen exhaled softly, his expression softening as he thought of the silver-haired girl. She was a freak even he struggled to deal with. During the half-year she spent hunting him, Mu Chen faced her 3 times, winning twice. But in their final encounter, she turned the tables. Her black longsword was like a ghost in the night, hovering over his throat. This time, she had clearly won, and thoroughly so. She only needed a light thrust, and Mu Chen would have been left to remain forever in the spirit road. However, she didn't strike. Her glass-like eyes lingered on him for a long time before she slowly sheathed her sword and said softly, "I won't kill you. Come with me." Mu Chen had been stunned for a long moment before finally asking the question that had been frustrating him for months. "Why have you been hunting me all this time? If I hadn't saved you, you'd be dead by now." When he first saw her, she was trapped in a life-or-death situation, surrounded by 5 other cunning freaks who nearly killed her. Mu Chen hadn't planned to intervene at first, since those guys were trouble, too. But perhaps it was because of the moment of sorrow he saw in her glass-like eyes. He softened and saved her. That act had brought him the trouble of those 5. Over the next week, he had to escape with the injured girl, and after 10 days, he had defeated them all. 3 died, and the other 2 gave up. But just when Mu Chen thought he could finally breathe, the girl, who had never spoken to him before, drew her sword. Thus began their months-long cat-and-mouse game. The girl, hearing Mu Chen's question, seemed to think for a moment before hesitantly giving an answer that made Mu Chen feel like he could vomit blood. "I don't want to like you. I just want to cultivate. If I like you, it will distract me." "You've got to be kidding," Mu Chen muttered, unable to hold back his words. "So what about now?" Mu Chen asked, feeling a bit defeated. "I was going to kill you earlier, but it seems I can't bring myself to do it." The girl considered it seriously, the pale moonlight shining on her delicate face, which could one day bring about disaster. After a moment, she furrowed her brow and said, "I think, over the past half-year, I've started to like you." Mu Chen was speechless, staring at the sky. "We've been chasing each other for half a year, and you've somehow developed feelings? I didn't kill you earlier, so you owe me a life. You have to join my team. If I ever stop liking you, I'll just kill you then." "Are you raising a puppy?" "Well, if I don't kill you, I'll let you go." Mu Chen helplessly shook his head and turned to leave. "I can block all the cold arrows from behind for you. As long as you don't harm me, I will protect you, whether on the spirit road or in the vast world." The girl gazed at Mu Chen, who was turning to leave, hesitated for a moment, and softly spoke. Mu Chen's steps paused. The girl's soft voice seemed to cut through space, suddenly striking heavily at his heart, causing his expression to soften without him even realizing it. "Normally you don't speak much, but I didn't expect you to be so moving when you do." Mu Chen turned around, smiled, then sighed, walking back toward her and extending his hand. "Well then, let's cooperate happily." The girl's usually calm face, which rarely showed emotion, was now touched by a faint smile. In that moment, her beauty even seemed to dim the moonlight itself. Then, she extended her icy cold, jade-like hand, and they shook hands lightly. "This is my promise to you." The campfire blazed, casting its warm glow over Tang Xun'er's delicate body, but it only made her feel a chill. This chill came from Mu Chen's description of the Spirit Road world she had once longed for. "It seems the Spirit Road isn't as beautiful as I thought. Good thing I didn't go, or I might not even have bones left," Tang Xun'er said with a slight palpitation. She really couldn't imagine what it would be like to live in a place where trust didn't even exist, always on edge. It was never a good place to begin with. Mu Chen smiled, then looked up. He saw Teacher Imo waving to the group, and the students turned their attention to him. "This time, our training in the Northern Spirit Wilderness will be based here. Tomorrow, you will depart from here and head to the Northern Spirit Wilderness for training, facing the spirit beasts there in direct combat. Before we start, I must remind you that spirit beasts are divided into 3 levels: low, mid, and high. Most of the spirit beasts at the edge of the Northern Spirit Wilderness are low level, but even so, you must work together to deal with them." Teacher Mo's voice echoed through the camp, steady and serious, as every student listened intently. They all understood this wasn't just practice, it was real combat. One misstep could lead to becoming food for a spirit beast. Low-level spirit beasts are about the strength of the spirit movement stage. Mid-level ones are at the spirit wheel stage, and high-level spirit beasts even possess strength comparable to the divine soul stage. In the depths of the Northern Spirit Wilderness, there are high-level spirit beasts, so you absolutely cannot venture too deep into the area. At this point, his tone grew stern. The high-level spirit beasts in the depths of the Northern Spirit Wilderness were troublesome even for him to deal with, and these new students, fresh out of the academy, were like defenseless lambs. The students nodded repeatedly. They weren't stupid enough to risk their lives. Let alone high-level spirit beasts. Even mid-level ones would send them running as fast as they could. For this training, the top 3 teams will each have one person receive a spirit-nurturing pill. Teacher Mo's expression softened slightly as he looked at the students, whose eyes instantly brightened. He smiled and said, "So, to earn a good result, cooperate well with your teammates. With your current strength, you'll need to rely on teamwork to make it through the edge of the Northern Spirit Wilderness." "Yes," the students responded in unison. After hunting spirit beasts, don't forget to collect their essence. Although the essence of low-level spirit beasts won't interest a divine soul stage expert for refining, it will be used to evaluate your performance. Mu Chen nodded slightly. Divine soul stage experts had the ability to refine the essence of spirit beasts, and with their strength, ordinary spirit beasts were clearly beneath their notice. "Teacher Imo, you're a divine soul stage expert. What kind of beast essence have you refined?" one curious student asked. They were extremely interested in the unique ability of divine soul experts to refine beast essence. Teacher Imo hesitated for a moment, then formed a hand seal. A powerful spiritual energy erupted from his body. Golden light gathered behind him, transforming into a giant golden wolf howling toward the sky. Lightning-like patterns could be seen running along the wolf's body, giving it a majestic and formidable appearance. "Wow." Master Shi, who had been explaining the rules to the heavenly class students of the Western Academy, glanced over and smirked at the sight. His body trembled slightly, and a surge of immense spiritual energy erupted from him. Behind him, a massive black lion materialized in the form of a radiant projection, its back adorned with a gray turtle shell. All the students stared in awe as the 2 divine soul stage experts summoned the spirit beast essences they had refined. Their gazes burned with envy. Such power was truly mesmerizing. "I have refined the spirit essence of the high-rank spirit beast, the Golden Thunder Wolf. This beast is recorded in the 10,000 Beast Codex, though its ranking isn't very high, only at 382nd place on the Earth list. Master Shi, on the other hand, has refined the beast soul of the high-rank spirit beast, the Stone Turtle Lion, which is ranked 390th on the Earth list." Teacher Imo smiled at Master Shi's display, then casually waved his hand, causing the golden wolf projection behind him to fade away. A spirit beast this powerful is only ranked in the 300s on the Earth list? Then what kind of monsters occupy the top 100? And what about the legendary heaven list of the 10,000 Beasts Codex? Wouldn't those creatures be utterly monstrous? A student gasped in disbelief. If even the Earth list beasts were this fearsome, then the heaven list ones must be beyond comprehension. Any spirit beast ranked within the top 100 of the Earth list is no longer a mere spirit beast. Their power far surpasses that of divine soul stage experts, rivaling those who have stepped into the three heavens realm. That's why they are classified as heaven-class spirit beasts, or simply heaven beasts. At this point, Teacher Mo suddenly cast a glance at Mu Chun, who immediately understood the implication. His father had refined a dragon flame eagle, a beast ranked within the top 100 of the Earth list. That meant the dragon flame eagle had reached the level of a heaven beast. Normally, it was incredibly difficult for a divine soul stage expert to refine a spirit beast essence stronger than themselves. The fact that Mu Feng had succeeded was an extraordinary stroke of fortune. It was precisely because of this that Mu Feng was ranked among the top 3 of the 9 lords of the Northern Spirit Realm. After all, the greatest advantage of reaching the divine soul stage lay in refining a spirit beast essence, which effectively granted an additional source of combat power. Naturally, the stronger the beast refined, the stronger the cultivator would be. As for the legendary existences recorded in the heaven list of the 10,000 Beasts Codex, Teacher Mo paused for a moment before chuckling. Even the supreme powerhouses of the great thousand world wouldn't dare provoke them lightly. Alright, that's enough for today. Get some rest. Tomorrow at dawn, you will enter the Northern Spirit Wilderness and begin your real training. With that, Teacher Mo waved his hand, signaling the excited students to disperse. The crowd gradually dispersed, still brimming with excitement. Mu Chun returned to his tent and sat down cross-legged, closing his eyes as he attempted once more to condense a second sinister death seal. The night passed without incident. At dawn, the camp was already bustling with activity. The students had all made their preparations, their faces alight with excitement as they gazed at the vast forest ahead. Mu Chun stood alongside Tang Xun'er. With a casual glance, he spotted Tan Qingshan not far away. To his surprise, Imo Ling was standing beside him. It seemed the two had formed a team, which left Mu Chun somewhat perplexed. Imo Ling was at the late spirit movement stage. If he were looking for a teammate, there were certainly better candidates than Tan Qingshan. Mu Chun, are you and Xun'er teaming up? Haha, I'm with Qingshan. He's new here, and this place can be dangerous, so I figured I'd look out for him. Imo Ling grinned as he approached with Tan Qingshan. Mu Chun nodded with a smile. From Imo Ling's words, he could sense a deliberate attempt to build rapport. It was clear that Imo Ling's decision to look after Tan Qingshan had less to do with kindness and more to do with forming a connection with Mu Chun. Senior Imo Ling is certainly thoughtful, Mu Chun said with a smile. He had no negative feelings toward Imo Ling, so he didn't mind the gesture. The two chatted briefly, but their conversation was abruptly interrupted when the crowd suddenly parted. Several familiar figures emerged, heading straight toward Mu Chun. The leader was none other than Liu Yang, the student Mu Chun had defeated in the academy trial. Liu Yang's gaze was dark and brooding. His loss in the trial had been a severe blow to his reputation. Even after entering the heavenly class, despite his older brother being Lu Mubai, he still faced whispers of ridicule, which only fueled his anger. Mu Chun barely spared Liu Yang a glance before shifting his attention to the young man beside him. The newcomer was tall and powerfully built, his expression carrying an amused curiosity as he studied Mu Chun. So, you're Mu Chun? You've been making quite a name for yourself lately. Chun Tong, what are you planning to do? Imo Ling's brow furrowed as he saw the two young men, his voice lowering. Mu Chun, however, remained calm. Chun Tong, this name was quite famous. Although not as renowned as Lu Mubai, he still held the third spot on the overall rankings. With his strength in the late spirit movement stage, he was on par with Imo Ling and was considered a key candidate for further cultivation. Before, you always came alone to show off, but now you're bringing someone along just to dare show up? Mu Chun glanced at Liu Yang, then smiled. Upon hearing this, Liu Yang's face immediately darkened, and in a cold tone, he replied. Just wait. Don't let us cross paths in the northern spirit wilderness. If we do, you'll regret it. Chen chuckled, shaking his head. Compared to your elder brother, you're really lacking. Heh, you're quite arrogant, Luo Tong said with a sneer. Let me introduce myself. I'm Chen Tong from the Western Academy. I've been wanting to see the one and only person from the Northern Spirit Realm to earn a qualification for the Spirit Road. Let's go. Chen gave a slight smile, too lazy to engage further with these two, and walked past Chen Tong. Then, he paused, turning his head to look toward the distance. There, Lu Mubai, dressed in white and looking exceptionally handsome, was watching them calmly. Their gazes met, and there seemed to be a coldness in the air. The surrounding students quietly fell silent. If you don't like me, then come at me yourself, Chen said lightly, smiling. I don't care much for these people. With that, he continued walking, leading Tang Xun'er and the others out of the camp, heading swiftly toward the northern spirit wilderness. Lu Mubai narrowed his eyes, watching Chen leave, a faint cold glint passing through his gaze. This bastard! Lu Yang gritted his teeth. Chen Tong grinned, his eyes showing a hint of darkness. It's fine. Let him show off for now. We'll definitely meet in the northern spirit wilderness. Once no one's watching, I'll teach him what manners are. He's really